Turn now to questions. And I have agreed, honourable members, that under Standing Order 3.54, Mr Morehouse can ask the following oral urgent question. If the Minister will make a statement, Minister for Home Affairs will make a statement on the future of the old police station in Castletown. And I call on the honourable member for Arbury, Castletown and Maloo, Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr President. I'd like to ask the Minister for Home Affairs if he will make a statement on the future of the old police station in Castletown.
Call on the Minister for Home Affairs, Mr Malarkey.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, I'm more than happy to make a statement in relation to Castletown Police Station, and will do so to answer the Honourable Member for Arbury, Castletown and Maloo's question. My department declared that the Castletown Police Station surplus the requirement as a result of a successful move into the Commissioner's building. This move was designed to support neighbourhood policing, working closely with our partners in the local community. Therefore, in accordance with and as required by financial regulations, the building was circulated via a strategic asset management unit around all government departments for expressions of interest. In this connection, the only expression of interest received was from Manx National Heritage. Subsequently, Manx National Heritage presented a business case to Treasury to transfer the building to the Manx Museum and National Trust ownership, followed by a sympathetic conversation and lease to a third-party commercial tenant. Treasury replied to the business case was that the Manx National Heritage could purchase the building for the market price less 10%, that's a reduction of 25,000 discount, to reflect economic and social factors with the view of an early transfer. Treasury's decision was considered by Manx National Heritage Trust, who decided that they did not wish to proceed with their statement in this regard, and has been aired publicly in the media for all to hear, and it states that there are more appropriate immediate requirements for the charitable fund. Given that fact, no interest remained within government for the ownership of the police station, the property, as a result of the Treasury and Manx Heritage Trustees' decision, and in accordance with financial regulations, was put on the open market for sale. I believe it's important to stress that my department is bound by and has to comply with financial regulations. It must be remembered that the building is protected by its registration. Manx National Heritage are going to be registered as an interested third party, which will give them added involvement in any planning application. In addition, and importantly, the Treasury and Government are bound by financial regulations to achieve fair value for disposing of government assets, which is particularly important in these days of financial constraint. I'm sure the Honourable Member would support the objective of achieving the best value for the taxpayer wherever opportunities arise. Following the statement issued by trustees of the Manx Museum and National Trust on Thursday, Treasury have offered to provide an interest-free loan facility at the Manx Museum and National Trust to facilitate the purchase, whilst also enabling the trustees to manage their charitable reserves. No doubt this will be considered by Treasury in due course, so at this stage it's quite early stages, Mr President. This is the latest developments that I'm aware of.
Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr President.
Mr Morehouse, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Minister. Some very good news there, and hopefully it will go through. I recognise that you already have a clear idea about what should happen. However, it's been suggested the Police Museum would really benefit the town and, more importantly, send out a positive public message about what the police do. As the Home Affairs Minister, being able to have discussions with Manx National Heritage about these possibilities.
Minister to reply.
President, as I said in my statement, the first approach was to Manx National Heritage to purchase this property. It's them that have turned around and said they're not in a position to do so. It is not for me to say what the property should be used for. I am constrained by financial regulations that I have a property which is surplus to my requirement, has been offered to the appropriate people, and now has to go on the market for sale, sir.
Honourable Member Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Minister. The building is described as a handsome and much admired building in the details for the sale. It also tells us that it's been sold freehold. Were alternatives considered which would have enabled the building to be returned to future generations and also possibly place more control over the building?
Malarkey.
Mr. President, the building is a registered building and it's controlled by planning as to what can happen with the building. Again, this is not up to me as Minister of Home Affairs to start stipulating what the building must be used for. This, we will obviously, if we do have any offers, and nothing can come from Manx National Trust with regard to purchase, I would be extremely careful as to what I thought the building should be sold for, but the final word will come from Treasury because it's a government asset.
Honourable Member for Onchan, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Mr President. I will declare that I'm a trustee on the Manx National Heritage, so I will actually just put that on the record this morning. Can I just ask the Minister, Manx National Heritage is part of the government overall structure through the Department of Enterprise, so I cannot understand, or if you can possibly just explain, why it can't just be transferred over to the Manx National Heritage. It remains in the government portfolio. It's looked after a third party. Manx National Heritage could have this property developed and back supporting Castletown, you know, as he was looking for regeneration. So can I just ask a simple question of why can't it just be transferred over to the Manx National Heritage free of cost for them to look after it on behalf of the rest of the government and for the people of this island?
Yeah. Minister to reply.
Mr. President, as I said, I'm restricted by government policy on this, but I can't see why I should suddenly have to transfer properties free of charge to other or to charities, which is also a part of Manx National Heritage, from external funding as well as internal funding they get from government. They would put me in a very awkward situation to start with other properties that my department is actually trying to free up moving forward. I can't start picking and choosing which people can get free properties and which people can't, Mr. President. That's not in my remit, sir.
Honourable Member for Ramsey, Mr Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to pick up on something the Minister has said that he's bound by financial regulations. FD29 is quite specific in that where there is no change of use, transfers between government departments and statutory boards can be at nominal cost. Now, in this instance, would the Minister accept that there will inevitably be a change of use? It's unlikely someone's going to buy it and run it as a police station. And so what consideration was given to actually transferring the property at nominal cost, which would have been in line with FD29?
Hear, hear.
Minister.
That decision was not for me to make, Mr. President. That was a decision for Treasury to make. If that was to happen, it's not up to my department to transfer properties free of charge.
Honourable Member for Council, Mr Crookall.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, would the Honourable Minister agree with me that now that his department no longer needs this building, it's been transferred to DOI, the Strategic Asset Management Unit, and before this, I think, degenerates into another Ramsey Courthouse situation, would he be happy to support the idea that this is taken off the market for the time being until this is sorted, and for M&H to have to possibly look at finding ways of having it transferred across to them, which is what I think the public of the island probably want at the moment?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Mr. President, as I said in my answer, I am happy to announce that I believe that Manx National Heritage are actually talking to Treasury of a way of solving this problem at the moment. And at this stage, I'm not going to interfere in anything that's going on between Treasury and Manx National Heritage that might jeopardise this.
Honourable Member for Middle, Mr Shimmons.
Thank you, Mr President. Is the Minister aware that the last audited financial accounts for the Manx Museum and National Trust, as at the end of March 2017, show substantial cash at bank of £2,668,325, whereas the creditors on the balance sheets, that's amounts falling due in less than 1 year, total a very small amount of £4,825. This is one context for the ongoing discussions on this iconic and much-loved building.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, I wasn't aware of the balance sheet, and to be perfectly honest, that's not in anything that I would take consideration of. I'm just following financial regulations with regard to my department of disposing of property. Yes, it is an important property. I do hope that it will get into the right hands, but that is not for my decision to make, Mr. President.
Honourable Member for Arbury, Castletown and Maloo, Mr Crigeen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Minister like to confirm that I've been in discussions with both the Chief Minister, the Treasury Minister and M&H to see if we can get this sorted out, and negotiations are still ongoing?
Minister.
I can confirm that the Honourable Member did contact me last night with regard to this. That's why I'm not in a position to go to say anything else on this subject until I find out what comes out of Treasury, Mr. President.
Honourable Member for Ayr and Michael. Mr Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to confirm with the Minister that as far as he is concerned, the offer has been made very clear from Treasury that we are very willing to engage with Manx National Heritage on this issue, and in fact that Treasury did fully engage with Manx National Heritage on this issue when this building first became free, and at that time business cases and discussions took place, and in the business case that we received at the time, the business case was clear that conservation and representation as an historic police museum was not proposed. But ways to acknowledge and celebrate Manx Police Service within the building would be sought. And arts and craft have also been discussed by the heritage bodies, and restaurant or catering is not to be encouraged, although niche crafts, including food and drink, would not be excluded. Would you agree with me? The best thing now is for the Treasury to engage properly with Manx National Heritage Trust and see whether indeed the Heritage Trust is willing to commit to purchasing the building, and for Treasury to provide every assistance to them in doing so.
Minister.
Mr. President, I am happy to support what the Treasury Minister is saying. This from the word go, Manx National Heritage were involved in this. They were offered the building. It was actually Manx National Heritage who were the first to put out a press release with regard to the fact that they were no longer interested or to finance it. My understanding is Treasury has been fully cooperative with Manx National Heritage along this matter, and they are still trying to help Manx National Heritage at this time. So I really don't think that this conversation can go any further, because this is still open for negotiation as far as I'm concerned. All from my department has been asked this morning. I've complied with financial regulations. We've offered it round. If a deal cannot be struck with Manx National Heritage, then the property will have to go on the open market, Mr. President.
Honourable Member for Onchan, Mr Callister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, it comes back to the original question. I'd like to understand of why Manx National Heritage has to buy the property. I was asking the Minister again of why can't the building just be transferred to Manx National Heritage for the good of the nation. I would also like just to mention that the £2 million, my honourable colleague from Middle, £2.7 million. I haven't got the accounts in front of me, Mr. President, but I think we have to distinguish the difference between what's held on charitable funds, and therefore it's earmarked and it has specific persons, a specific purpose for what those funds are used, and what can and can't be used. This is a government building which is hopefully we're trying to transfer to another arm of government to look after for the nation. That's all I'm asking for. Why does another government department or another government entity have to actually pay for something? That's all I'm asking the Minister to clarify.
Minister to reply.
Mr. President, I can only repeat my restrictions under financial regulations. If this is, as I repeat it again, if this is something that Treasury wants to enter into, that's up to Treasury. We must remember, in all our departments, Treasury has the final word. They're the ones that look after the purse strings. They have to look after the money. So Treasury are talking to Manx National Heritage, which I think is good. They are being very cooperative with them. But we cannot go around giving properties to, making priorities, giving properties away that are owned by the taxpayer, Mr. President.
Honourable Member for Ayr and Michael, Mr Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. President. And could I just actually support and ask for the Minister's endorsement, further endorsement of the very comments he's just made. Police stations, courthouses, historic hotels, purchasing, giving things away. The taxpayer has a right to demand that the Treasury and the government act in a proper, mature financial way. And it's not just a case of transferring an asset. These assets need upkeep, they need maintenance, they need money spending on them. And whilst some honourable members in here just think the government should be a giveaway machine, a lot of us want to maintain credible financial controls, and it's not just a case of transferring this from one department to another, because it's not departmental. The heritage organisations and bodies are separate in terms of their intent and their operational value and value to society. But we have to work with these bodies in a proper, mature financial way. And does the Minister agree to me, therefore, that it's right and proper that whilst Treasury, of course, recognise the historical value of this building, that it works with Manx National Heritage in such a way so as everybody receives the best possible outcome from any deal that is there to be had?
Reply, sir.
I can only fully agree with what the Treasury Minister has just said, Mr. President.